Hello everyone, welcome to the Worldwide Crimes, and now let's begin the video. Washington DC, May 2015, 46 years old, Savas Sapolius, they had started much the same as ever with work. He was a successful CEO of a huge construction company, American Iron Works In. They were a leading manufacturer of custom-made building products and installation services and Washington DC region. He was married to his high school sweetheart, Amy. The pair both went to the same university, and this was where they really hit off and started dating. He and Amy would soon marry in a Greek wedding, and over the next few years, they had their three children together, two daughters, Katrina and Abigail, and one son, Philip. He joined his family iron works business, working closely with his dad. The Sapolius family soon became well known in the community, and their hard work over the years had afforded them a very lovely life. The family lived in a beautiful multi-million-dollar mansion on Woodland Drive, one of the most olfactory areas and homes of some famous name over the years, including vice president and ambassadors. Savas was described as a brilliant man of impeccable character, and he and Amy were genius with both their time. Amy was a regular face at their children's school, too often baking and decorating gingerbread house for the whole class and volunteering where she could. There are two daughters, 19 years old Abigail and 16 years old Katrina. We are now out of the town of boarding school, so things everyone was keeping busy. Amy had been catching up with friends and hosting get-together and parties. Savas was working on a new business venture, and Philip had been racing around to go-kart track with his coach. Nothing made a 10-year-old more happier than his family followed him all over for his races, and he was showing real promises for being a serious competitor in a few years' time. Jed described him as a 10 years old going on 35. He was just that mature, definitely taking after his dad. But Philip's latest race on 3rd May, however, didn't go smoothly, and he ended up getting a concussion. He was sent home to rest, but the doctor was confident it was nothing to worry about, it was just a major injury. Wednesday, May 13th, with Phillips is still home from school and taking it easy. Amy was also home looking after him. The pair made a quick trip to the doctor to check up on his concussions. Before heading back to the house, Savas was also out and about when to check in his latest project, a martial arts studio he was building in Virginia, which was just few days away from opening. He took their housekeeper Ninita, who went by Nellie, with him to take over things and do some cleaning and getting everything ready for the grand opening. At 4:25, a dog sitting company called Amy to confirm an upcoming appointment. The employees spoke to Amy a lot, and she said she sounded sleepy and under the weather. Not her usual chatty self at all. Closely after 5 p.m., Savas got a call from Amy himself. The full conversation did not known quite, but Savas hung up and told Nellie he was going back to home to look after Philip because Amy had apparently made plans to go out. At this time, Amy was at home and their second housekeeper, Vera, but she was now overdue to clock off. Savas drove back and nearly went home too, ready to start from work again. But next day, Nellie had been with the family for 20 years and had introduced Vera to them about 5 years ago. Nellie and Vera were both very well known and part of their family. Vera had been sending her all saving back to home children who were still living in LA and going to college there. It was getting later, and Vera's husband Bernardo was sat at home wondering where on earth she was. She was supposed to finish at 3 pm, but his wife being late back without contacting him just never happened. He called her, but it seemed through the battery had either died or the phone had switched off. Bernardo now shift himself and would be working through night, so he tried his best to put his concern aside. His wife's lack of contact was best. He would all through Bernardo was having no luck getting through the Sapolius house. Other people seemingly where a string of odd calls and texts would follow. Just before 6 pm, the security company that monitored the Sapolius house received an alert about broken glasses on the outside of the house. But it seemed as though nothing was wrong, and Savas even spoke to them himself and asked how he could access the footage for himself and where it was stored. Savas then called his assistant and personal driver for a couple of months, Jordan Wallace, but couldn't get through. He left him a voicemail asking him to go to American Iron Works and pick up a package. Savas said he needed to be delivering the next morning. At 9 pm, Amy called a local Domino's pizza. She had placed an order for 2 pepperoni pizzas and paid over the phone with her credit card. Before the employee hung up, Amy said that I am caring for a sick child, just leave it by in front door, just don't knock it. At 9:35 pm, Savas left a voicemail for Nellie. Unusually, he told her not to come to work. The next day, he said Vera was going to stay the night because Amy was ill. He told Nellie that Vera's phone was dead and they didn't have a charger, so he just went passing on the message. Nellie would not get the message until the next morning when the Domino's delivery guy got the house. He followed Amy's instruction and put the pizza on the ground outside. Just by the doormat was an envelope with a tip in it. As he picked it up, he noted that the porch light was on, but inside that house was totally dark and eerily quiet. He got back to his car and carried on with his deliveries. 13th May, Savas' assistant Jordan then his voicemail and texted him back saying, "Got your message, I'll call once I'll get the package." 7 am, Savas called Jordan again and also his CFO asking for $40,000 in cash, telling him to take it out of the bank and getting it to Jordan ASAP. Jordan picked up the parcel and the money and set off for a Sapolius home. Savas had given him very clear instruction: do not knock the door, just put the packages outside and the money inside the red sports car. Savas said, "Don't knock, I'll be on conference calls, just go to Charity, I'll be right behind you." This was where his new martial arts studio was, so it wasn't an unusual place to meet him there. At 9:30 am, Bernardo got a call from his night shift and found that Vera still wasn't there. Concerning was now panic, and he drove to Sapolius' home, 3201 Woodline Drive. At 9:55 am, Nellie just got a text from Amy confirming that Savas had said in the voicemail she was absolutely not to came to the work that day. Nellie got this message just as she heard the voicemail and described Savas as sounding frustrated and tensed. He could also hear the sound like shouting in the background. And as far as Savas saying Vera was staying over, this was never happened before. Neither she or Vera had ever stayed the night. Nellie said that this felt really weird. She had known the family for 2 decades. Something was wrong and she wasn't getting the full story. She tried to call Amy but didn't get through. She sent her text I hope everything is okay. Again, there was no reply from there. When Bernardo got the house in the Woodland Drive, he too met with a silence. He rang the doorbell and banged on the door. He could hear what sounded like shuffling and murmuring and hear the dogs making noise. And then he hear sounded like scrapping, almost as if chair being dragged across the floor. Suddenly his phone rang. It was Savas. I'm sorry I didn't call you last night. Vera had stayed the night with us, he said, apologizing over and over. He said that Amy was still ill and now Vera had gone to the hospital with her. So she wasn't just going there. Savas was the only other side of the door, so why would he just didn't open the door? It was odd, but neither way, at least he had heard for someone, or maybe everything was fine and he was just overthinking at all. Bernardo hung up and drove back to home, waiting to see his wife later. Jordan arrived at the house, dropping the package at the money in the car before heading back to the vehicle. At 10:26 a.m., Jordan sent Savas a text message saying packages delivered. He sat in his car for a minute, watching his phone as the three dots appeared and then disappeared for a while on his text and thread to Savas. He never got any reply from Savas. At 1:30 p.m., residents started calling 911, reporting a fire on Woodland Drive. The Sapolius home had gone up in flames and it was spreading fast. The family dogs were apparently found outside, stressed but not physically harmed. As the firefighters battled the roaring flames and got into the house, they found 4 people. In one bathroom, they found Savas, Amy, and Vera. In the room next door, they found 10-year-old Philip. His body was so badly charred. He was unrecognizable. They couldn't even determine a gender. He was just listed as an adult individual. Savas, Amy, Philip were all dead, but Vera was found unconscious and clinging to live. She was rushed to the hospital battling her injuries, but she didn't make it. She also died. Autopsy confirmed that all 4 victims had been beaten with a basketball or bat and suffocated, strangled, bound, and stabbed. Savas and Amy had died from blunt and sharp force trauma, and the medical examiner said that Philip suffered these injuries to even being stabbed with a samurai sword, but had been possibly made burned alive on his bed, which was where he found. His injuries were too severe to be conclusive. However, all 4 people had been downstairs in gasoline and fire had been started in Philip's bedroom. Amy and Vera had duct tape residue on their wrist, and Savas had been restrained, possibly with a zip tie. It was Horrid's set of autopsy which confirmed that everyone in the house had been put simply tortured over a very long time of period. A single window on the other side of the house had been smashed. The phone lines had been cut and there was a footprint on the phone on one of the doors which indicated it could have been kicked as the boots did not match the firefighters. A knife was found stuck in a gap in the window, almost popping it open. A computer containing video footages from the home surveillance system had been ripped out of the attire. The keyboard and the wire had been left, but the computer itself had been stolen. This would never be located. Neighbors never really had seen or heard anything, but a couple of residents reported that around 12 p.m., about in half and half before the fire started, a middle-aged black man with a dreadlocks going into the family garage. He didn't look like it a forced door open. It just looked like opened for him or someone on the other side had been opened it. A blue 2008 Porsche residence to the family was seen on the driveway on the morning, but now it was missing. On camera in northeast DC picked up this Porsche heading east towards Maryland shortly after the house had gone up in flames. So it didn't seem that this was the gateway vehicle for whoever had done this. Police would later find the burning car in the back of the church parking lot. Video footage showed someone running away from the car in dark clothing carrying what looked like a white box, but nothing about the person would be made out. Once they got out the flames under control inside the car, investigators found a green construction waste which was still relatively intact, so that could be sent off for a DNA test. Back at the Sapolius home, what little was left behind was being examined and tested too. A fair bit of cash had been left behind alongside some expensive items like paintings and jewelries. They also found a half-eaten Domino's pizza that had not been touched by the flames. It was when they learned that Amy had made the call to 9 p.m. to order these pizzas, but given what they have known about the injuries, it seemed that the killer had been the one to order via Amy. It was also seemed like that the killer was the one to eat it. They were really hopeful that they would be able to get some DNA of the leftover crust so that this could send to the lab. And a 19 years old Katrina posted individual tributes to her loved ones on Facebook, to her dad, to her mom, and to her little brother. Testing on the items was now coming back, and now unbelievably they did get DNA from saliva found on the pizza crust. It was linked to somebody that was already very much in their system. It was really incredible to think that somebody made the decision to bang up the pizza rather than just throw it away, assuming nothing would off, because that was what led them to the suspect to rapidly, and within a week of murders on May 20, an arrest warrant was issued for 34 years old Darren Dallin Dennis Winton. Darren's DNA was found on the knife in the window and in the bed of the green construction waste inside the Porsche. The burning car had been located about 2 minutes walk from the apartment complex wherein once lived too, as well as all the DNA. They learned that Darren was a former employee at the Savas company about 10 years before working as a welder. He also occasionally did work around the Sapolius family, whom American Iron Works colleagues said that Savos was friends with all of his employees and made an effort to get to know everyone in personal level. Darren had been one of these friends when he worked there, but Darren's employment at Iron Works was not to last when he lost his job over threatening a co-worker with a knife. He had also problems maintaining employment and contained iron workers in 2008 or 2009, asking to be given second chance, which he did not get. Darren came to US in 2000 and had been in US Marine Corps record, but he was discharged before he finished his training for medical reasons. He then gathered a long list of charges and conviction, including assault, burglary, destruction of property and theft, domestic violence, sexual offenses, and weapon possession. By the time this particular crime had happened, this green card was already on precautious position due to receiving an stolen property, but certain authorities were not notified about this, so it seemed like he had slipped under the radar a little. In 2005, his own father had taken out a protective order against him, and in 2010 he was arrested at the gas station across the street from American Iron Works. He was armed with pistol and Machete. A day after the warrant was issued at 11 pm, Darren was finally tracked down in a truck driving with three other people. He had been on the run since he saw his name and face on the news. Even taking a taxi from Washington, D.C. to New York, his girlfriend had called the police to tell them where he might be after she realized that they were looking for him. $100 bills were scattered around the vehicle. He was finally taken into custody. Darren lived with his dad, stepmother, and siblings, and his stepmother said he spent his days looking for work, working out at the gym, and his phone and computer. He also used his brother's name, Stephen, from the time. Although he was a frequent Facebook user, there was no activity on his profile between 6 a.m. on May 13th and 6 p.m. on May 14th. People had tried to contact him, including his girlfriend, Vanessa, who sent a message to him on May 14th that he didn't reply. A few hours after the fire had been started, he sent her a message of two iPhones asking if they could be tracked. While on the run, he also searched online how to beat a lie detector, 10 hideout cities for unvegetative and countries with no extra tradition and treaty. So, what on earth happened that night? While the full timeline of what went between 13th and 14th May is still relatively full of gaps, pieced together only by the odd phone call and text messages, it is thought that Darren entered the house sometimes around 3:30 p.m. and people are still unsure as to exactly how he did this. Either Amy, knowing him, let him in, or he forced his way in somewhere. The knife that had dropped open the window was thought to have been done after he gained entry. He had jammed the knife in the window to observe Jordan dropping off the money when Savos returned home, thinking he was going to look after his son while Amy was out. He actually walked in to find everyone orderly, held captive, and Darren tortured them for over next 19 hours. Despite the family doing everything he asked them, not once raising the alarm or calling for help or getting the $40,000, he still murdered them in a most horrific way. Darren Wendt was charged with first-degree murder while aimed and held without the bond. He was soon facing the charges of 20 charges. He pleaded not guilty, saying that his brother Darrell and Stephen had committed this crime and he just had been under the route, not realizing what was going on. Darren's lawyer, he also had unbelievably argument against the DNA. He said that despite the DNA being on the pizza crust, his client doesn't like pizza and never eats pizza, calling DNA a junk science. More than 3 years later, in 2018, a 7-week trial would get underway. With a lot of witnesses and experts, Darren's lawyer claimed it was Darren's two brothers who had planned it and carried out the killings, that Jordan Wallace was involved too. It was all being a lot big plot to exert Savos. They said that Darren once lived in the same apartment complex with Jordan's dad, so there could be a strong possibility they had run into each other before and formed a relationship. Prosecutors acknowledged that there may have been other people involved, but said even if Darren went up, he is still guilty. They said everything was motivated purely by greed and revenge as far as the green construction waste, because clothing like this would used by different people all the time. Everyone DNA could have been on them, but it didn't mean they were involved in the crime. And it was when Jordan and Darren's brother DNA surely that would have been easily proven or disproven. Ron Hosco spent 30 years working for FBI and said, I see so many pieces coming back to just one person. It's Darren Wind. He's a former employee. He is a person with anger and violence in his past. He is a person that has touches on Mr. Sapelius, and the company since his termination. He is a person that ends up with just under the money that was delivered here. His DNA in his two places related to the crime, so evidence circles Darren Wind. He is the guilty. Darren testified in his own defense and said, Yes, I have eaten pizza. I was just there and my brothers were killing them, and I just ate pizza and I didn't kill them. Darren's stepmother also testified against him and said that he and his van were unseen over a period of 36 hours during the time he was inside the family's home. She said this had instantly struck her as odd as 2 months he had been living with her. He had never been away that long. It wasn't until 6 p.m. the following day that he returned home. He then got into an argument with his dad, telling him he was stressed out. Then, now 36 years old Darren was found guilty of all charges against him, including first degree murder, kidnapping, burglary, extortion, arson, and theft. He was sentenced without possibility of parole. He appealed in December 2020, but 2 years later his conviction was held up and he was denied a new trial. Today date, no one else apart from Darren had ever been charged in the connection with the murders. Darren had not spoken about it since or named anybody, but for some people there are definitely still questions that linger when it comes to this case. For others, it makes complete sense that they knew from Darren his past relationships and his experience with Savos and his company. His accelerating crime record showed no signs of slowing down. A desperate person that was completely broken and someone that had already been arrested multiple times for violence and abusive behavior. He had already been at the family home before and past. He knew what was there and he knew what he could do to get what he wanted. The DNA has ever only pointed him, and the neighbors saw someone fitting his description going into the garage. What was left of the family's home was torn down in 2017, and its place a new mansion was built there. Savas, Amy, Vera, and Philip had been held captive and tortured for almost 19 hours, and the full extension of what happened in that house will not only never be known, but for Abigail and Katrina and Vera's husband Bernardo and their children Nellie and even Jordan, the delivery guy and Savos employees. The list of questions and thoughts just loop around and around and around. There are so many what if and may quickly followed by, but who could have ever known? Who could have ever thought that was going on? The cycle of letting thoughts along with all the consuming grief and pain of losing people in such horrific way dominate everyone's mind and always will. If you guys are interested in true crime documentaries like this, then you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until then, I'll see you in my next video.